Hey everybody! So today we're going to continue on with the other 4 videos about talking about the Galactic Center and how to actually try to incorporate this into chart weaving. These are just some ideas that I'm tossing out, right? Don't take any of these as absolute truth or that this is absolutely how you're supposed to work with the Galactic Center. You might find that you feel called to work with it a different way, and that is fine. I'm not saying that any of this is absolute. As my disclaimer, I am literally just fucking with astrology here, but I did want to toss out some ideas, some possible ways that you could work with this in reading a chart. If you wanted to try to incorporate it, playing around with it in your own chart, playing around with it in somebody else that you know's chart, or what have you. These are just some ideas to play around with, to see if they fit, see if they don't fit. I do feel like at this point I have a pretty, or at least somewhat pretty, decent handle on the Galactic Center from an astrological point of view and from a scientific point of view. Now, obviously, science and astrology work a little different, so it's applying kind of what's known about it scientifically to then applying it to astrology. I know that's not always how it's done with different things, but there's kind of a blending here that I did, if you will. So in this video today, I wanted to go over a couple example charts. I'm going to use my own because I have clearance to use my own. I can do whatever the hell I want with my own. And the other one belongs to somebody else that I know. That I did get, clearance to use for this purpose. But first, I don't think I mentioned this yet in a video. It is in the blog post, but I meant to mention it in one of the other videos, so I'm going to say it real quickly. And this really only applies to planets that are conjunct the Galactic Center. Okay, so any planet, I know I've talked about dispositions before and dispositors in other videos not having to do with the GC. In this case, when you have a planet conjunct the GC, you also want to look at, okay, like if you have Neptune conjunct the GC, you would want to look at what house Pisces is on the cusp of. Whatever house that is, that house will dispose of itself to Neptune. And with Neptune conjunct the Galactic Center, like in one of the examples I have here, that kind of brings that house with Pisces on the cusp into the GC as well. So definitely pay attention to this. I don't believe I've ever said this in a video, and quite frankly, I feel like an idiot for not mentioning this before. But it is in the most recent blog post, and the ones from earlier this week. I'm not sure if I'll do I say that because I'm not totally sure if I'll do a blog post on the video today. I probably will. But from the videos earlier this week, the blog post that was attached to it, that is mentioned. The dispositor thing is mentioned in those videos, or in that blog post. But you definitely want to take that into consideration as well when you are reading the GC, if it's a planet that's conjunct the GC. Now, if it's Chiron or a major angular, that's not so much the case. Not so much the case in that way, but definitely if you have a planet conjunct the GC or planets, you want to make sure to look at what sign, where like in the case of having Neptune conjunct the GC, where Pisces is what house cusp Pisces is on, because that house will then bend to Neptune and then bend to the GC. Definitely take that into account when you are reading this. And obviously, the closer the planet is to being exactly conjunct the GC, the more that other house will be impacted, if that makes sense. or will impact the GC. I also want to mention quickly about planets conjunct the GC. Now, a lot of the people in the research, they have had, a lot of them have been the, Neptune, Uranus. We've had a couple Plutos at this point, I believe. A couple. A little bit wide, but close. Now, this should go without saying that if we're talking about a transpersonal planet conjunct the GC, and I want to say this carefully because this won't always be the case, but a transpersonal planet conjunct the GC may not be felt. It may not cause the GC to be felt in as personal of a way. And I say may there because, okay, let's say Aquarius is, your rising is Aquarius, right? That puts your chart rulers as Saturn by traditional rulership and Uranus by modern rulership. In that case, if you've got Uranus conjunct the GC, it makes Uranus more personal, therefore it makes that transpersonal planet more personal. So transpersonal planets aren't always not personal. I mean, and to be fair, all planets are personal, right? They're all in your fucking chart somewhere. They're all personal. But when we think of the transpersonal planets, they are just not as personal as, say, the sun or the moon or Venus or Mercury, So the people that have, say, the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, even Saturn, even though I do kind of think of Saturn as Saturn's not generational like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are, but there is something kind of generational about Saturn too. There is. In my mind, there is. So, yeah, the more personal of a planet we're talking about conjunct the GC, that you have conjunct the GC, the more personal the GC might be felt. Just generally speaking. But again, be careful with that because that's not always the case, like with the Aquarius rising person, hypothetical person that I just talked about. Same thing with conjunctions to the anticenter, right? Say the same thing with the dispositors, right? If you have a planet conjunct the anticenter, let's say you've got I don't know. Let's say you've got Venus conjunct the anticenter. I know I'm probably going to fuck this up, but just because I'm not really looking at a chart. But whatever house cusp Libra and Taurus are on, those houses will dispose of themselves to Venus. And with Venus being conjunct the anticenter, will essentially kind of dispose of themselves to the anticenter too. So those houses will be involved with the anticenter. They will have an involvement there. And then the same thing could also be said about the anticenter with the, if we're talking about a more personal planet conjunct the anticenter, I could see that being more difficult than somebody that had a transpersonal planet conjunct the anticenter. Unless that transpersonal planet, again, was like the chart ruler, one of the, modern chart rulers. So anyway, and I wanted to get that out there because I don't think I'd mentioned either of those things before, and it did need to be mentioned. Let's start with an example. This is not mine. I'll do mine next. But this one is somebody else that I know. They have Neptune conjunct the GC at about 2 degrees in the 9th house. Mars and Jupiter are also, they're in the window of orb that's being looked at. But much wider. They have no oppositions to the anti-center, and they also they don't have Jupiter retrograde. They do have Jupiter out of bounds, though. Jupiter and Mars are both out of bounds. It's not quite the same thing as Jupiter being retrograde. It's not, but it does have like an affinity. The out of bounds planets do have an affinity for the GC. They feel like they do. And there's no trines. Okay. So if I were looking at this person's chart just from the lens of the GC, right? First, I would notice, obviously, Neptune is conjunct the GC. It's in the 9th house, meaning 9th house themes, beliefs, truth, higher learning, travel, of the mind and the body, religion, metaphysics. I think I just said that. All of those kinds of things and other things are going to, they're going to have, the GC is going to might play out in some of those areas of life. Pisces is on the cusp of their 12th house. So this brings the 12th house into the equation, meaning that the 12th house will bend to the 9th. So things like spirituality, things like escape. I know some people like to really associate the 12th house with karma. I don't always do that. Not always, not strictly. I know some people do. So we'll use that too here. We can say that. Karma. Karma comes into the equation. If you like the 12th house of karma thing. Imprisonment. Self-sabotage. All of those kinds of 12th, and the 12th house can be a lot of other things. So all of those 12th house things are going to bend to where Neptune is, right? They're going to bend to the 9th house. And they're also going to bend to the GC, or be warped by the GC, or be amplified by the GC, right? So there's that. Okay. I would take that into account. Mars, this person has an Aries, is Aries rising. So that does make Mars pretty important here. Even though it's a little wider, I would first here, if you've got something like this where you've got like one planet like really close to being conjunct the GC, and then you've got a couple other planets, they're a little out of orb. They're not out of orb. Actually, these planets are within the orb that I'm looking at, but they're just further away when you've got this one that's right there. I would look at what those, if you don't want to count them, you don't have to. I would still count them right now because of the wide net that was cast. And especially in this case with both Mars and Jupiter being out of bounds in this person's chart. I'm not pulling the deck, but I know they are. And out of bounds planets having an affinity for the GC. I would count it here as being conjunct the GC, even though it's a little wider. So that's a lot of shit going on at the GC, right? That's a lot of energy going on at the GC. But it's also a lot of planets that can actually absorb this energy at the GC. It's not just one, there's multiple things here. Now, Neptune will probably take the biggest hit, I would think overall, because it's the closest. But all of these planets are going to absorb that energy, meaning all of those planets are going to be fucking charged. If I know this person very well, I know that that's very true. This motherfucker is charged. There is like and I say motherfucker lovingly. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just, that's just kind of how I talk. So there's all this shit going on there, right? Now, the anti-center is in the 3rd house. Nothing's there. If you knew this person, you would know that this area of life for them, communication specifically, communicating, is a massive Achilles heel for this person. It is. It's a problem for them. They would even admit to you that it is a problem for them. which shows growth because in the past they would not have admitted this. So I commend them on that for being able to admit that. Took years. But there is a blinding there. You know, I won't go into any personal stuff, but this person does have, there are communication issues. If I didn't know this person, that's kind of where my mind would go anyway. Even like learning issues, perhaps. Not necessarily like learning disabilities, but just learning differently, maybe. I might think that that could be going on, but not really as realized, because it is going on at the anti-center, right? The anti. Yeah, communicating, sharing things, all those sorts of third housey things. So this area of life is getting shocked. There's just nothing there to take the impact. This person also has no trine. That their rising is almost a trine, but it is out of orb. It's about a degree or so out of orb, so I'm not counting it here. I almost wonder if I should, because Mars is conjunct the GC, and but I'm not going to here because I haven't, like I said, I'm still fucking around with how to actually, you know, bring this into practice. So they don't have a trine. For this person, their own Mercury is going to be very important for them. And I feel like, you know, I know I mentioned in the last video about what you could use if there aren't any trines, what you could look at. They also need to understand their Jupiter too, right? They do. But their Jupiter's a little bit more of a wild card because their Jupiter's conjunct the GC and their Jupiter's out of bounds. Their Jupiter's a little more of a wild card. Their Jupiter might not be the way to go here. Might not be. I'm thinking the way to go here is Mercury. Now, if you notice, their Mercury, is conjunct the descendant. It's also, it's combust with the sun. Now, I know people, I mean, yeah, combust and easy, but I don't really go into all that. I know some people will notice that if I don't say that it's combust. It is. But more than that, what stands out is that Mercury being close to the descendant, meaning Mercury, communication, right, is kind of part of the shadow side of this person anyway, which kind of backs up the idea that the anti-center in the third house in Gemini is has problems too. It kind of backs that up. This person needs to know their fucking Mercury very well. Not be an apathetic communicator in close relationships. Not have an apathy towards it. The dark, to me, one of the Libra dark sides is apathy. You can't find balance, so you just become apathetic. If you knew this person, you would know this person has done this. I think they have done this. I think they would probably agree with that too. So yeah, understanding not becoming apathetic in communication is important for this person. And understanding just Mercury in general in their chart, I think is pretty important since there's no trine there. Yeah. So now I'll show you mine. And I'll try to do this pretty quick. Okay, so mine, I have the Galactic Center in the first house. It is conjunct. Well, actually, pretty much everything in my first would be within the window of orb that we're looking at. The ascendant is, I don't know if I'd really count the ascendant here, but Saturn is at 21, Sagittarius, Uranus, and Venus are at 25. Sagittarius, Galactic Center is at 26. And then Neptune is at 6, Capricorn. So it's right almost outside of that. Opposite, we have Chiron in the 7th in Gemini. Jupiter is retrograde, and it's also the trine planet down here in the 4th in Aries. So if I didn't know me, if I didn't know me and I was looking at this chart, right, I would see that there's a lot of shit going on at the GC, close to the GC. There is both a personal and a transpersonal vibe to this, because we have Venus and Uranus up each other's ass, right on the GC. And then Saturn's there too. But if I'm honest, the times that I've looked at my chart, really I'm only looking at Venus and Uranus closely, personally. Saturn probably is influenced, I'm sure. Actually, I've always kind of wondered if Saturn pulls things back from falling completely down the rabbit hole or whatever. I don't know if that's a good thing. Maybe I'm supposed to fall down the rabbit hole. Okay, so there's a lot of shit going on in the GC, in the first house. So the GC is going to deal with, you know, themes having to do with myself and my own reactions to the world, my own attitudes towards things, natural reactions and temperaments and things like that. It's all GC influenced. Let's see here. The house, Libra is on the 11th house cusp. Taurus is on the 6th house cusp. And Aquarius is on the 3rd house cusp. And Capricorn is on the 2nd house cusp. So all of those houses, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 6th, and the 11th, are all going to bend to the GC, to the 1st house, and to the Galactic Center. All of those areas of life will bend to that. And will be kind of amplified or warped or what have you, changed, charged. Then there's Chiron getting butt fucked over in the 7th. Probably sustaining a hell of a lot more damage than I'm really aware of. And I think that's probably very much the case. Jupiter is retrograde, which kind of amplifies things in the chart, the GC stuff. Uranus and Venus are also out of bounds, which also amplifies. The moon is also out of bounds, but it's not involved with the GC. It's too far out of orb. And then Jupiter is trine, all of that stuff at the GC, which means that I have one way of translating anything from the GC, and that is through Jupiter. That is how I do that. With it in Aries and in the 4th house, this would definitely involve things like 4th house, things like the core of one's being, notions of family and home, and all, you know, all of those kinds of things are going to be involved with how the translation occurs. It's going to be done in an independent way, in a pioneering way, in a maybe even in an aggressive way. And it's going to be done through the vehicle of Jupiter, meaning the translation is going to be beliefs, truth, things like that. Jupiter things. Jupiter represents other things too, but you get the idea, because this video is getting kind of long. That's how it will be translated, or how I would think it would be translated, the stuff from the GC. Anyway, I am going to get going because this video got long. But yeah, I might do some more of this, just kind of to play around. I'm not going to sit there and go in real in depth and read people's charts. I'm not going to do that on video, but to read it from this lens, to kind of see kind of what pieces need to be looked at, what pieces need to be put together and things like that. I think that this is a worthwhile thing. I probably will do another one of these and then post it next week. If anybody that has done the research wants to volunteer as tribute for something like this, let me know. I won't say your name or anything. If you're not interested, I can just, pull random ass shit from, databases or whatever. But yeah. If you want to follow us on Instagram, you can find us at Let's Fuck with Astrology. I'm at Saturn Season Astrology on Instagram. Natalie is at Apaterno Astrology on Instagram. If you want to like, subscribe, whatever our videos on YouTube, you can go to Let's Fuck with Astrology, searching for it in the YouTube search bar. If you do the Reddit thing, come join us on the subreddit Let's Fuck with Astrology. And if you're interested in the star cards, go to letsfuckwithastrology.com/star-cards. Okay, y'all. I'll see y'all later.